ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Graham Hart Show with me, Brizer, here on Cornwall Revolution Radio and out of grism.blogspot.com, where Mammy welcomes you to the best news aggregate site on the World Wide Web. Good to have your company, folks. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, click on the HTML5 chat link on the top right-hand side of the page, just below the player of your choice. I'd also like to welcome listeners of Eurofolk Radio. Good to have you all on board too, folks. And I'd also like to make it clear to all listening that I reserve all rights to my words, as do my guests. So it's Monday, 2nd of March 2020, folks, and it's all ramping up nicely for us all, isn't it? Tonight, we're going to talk more about this and what's going on in the world. It's a returning guest. We had him on a few months back. I think a lot of you will know of him. It's Frank Raymond. He's joined us from British Columbia in Canada. Frank is the author of a great book called Sweet Dreams and Terror Cells, which I would urge everyone to check out. Go on to Amazon. It's still available there. You can get it and share it around to your friends and family and neighbours. It's a great read, great read. Frank, welcome. Great to have you back again.
Great to be on the Graham Hart Show, Brizer. Great to have you as an interlocutor.
Always good to have you, man. And,
but not as an interrogator. I don't want to be on the interrogation table.
I won't be shining bright lights onto you now, that's for sure. So, Frank, yeah, what's been happening with yourself and what have you been seeing lately? I heard you on the Andrew Carrington Hitchcock show there on Friday, and that was a very interesting show where you talk about where basically white nations now are occupied, and we have to find ways of unoccupying our lands. So, do you want to go into that first, or?
Well, today I'd like to turn to one aspect of occupation, the fact that white people cannot speak for their interests. And I'll tell you why I want to speak about this is because in the last show we did, you mentioned a certain E. Michael Jones. And you said to me that E. Michael Jones had recommended that you not use the word white when you advocate for white people. Yeah. People could immediately turn off and think of you as a white supremacist. Now that struck me as so important that it really needs addressing. And even if it takes the whole of this show today, it has to be addressed. Now, so that's what I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
The issue of using, explicitly advocating for white people and using the word white and white race.
Yeah.
Now, that's what I want to do today. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. You know how Michael Jones comes to that, that theory, or how he...
Well, we'll come to that.
We'll come to that. Okay, you start off then.
We'll come to that. But before that, there was some question. I made some comments about the gross domestic shitting and eating. And I spoke of the gross domestic fart volume. And if you recall, I said that if you have all this mass immigration and overpopulation, you'll also have a lot of shitting and eating. And the question of the gross domestic fart volume comes up. Now, the fact is, of course, that people are always talking about the flatulence of cows and how these cows are farting. They emit methane. The methane goes into the atmosphere. It increases the greenhouse effect. So after I spoke to you on that, I got a lot of reaction and emails and stuff. And it seems that certain evil-minded people have said that I was indulging in levity and humor. I can't think why. However, it is a fact that scientists and so-called experts are concerned with the flatulence of cows and other livestock, claiming that these farts are poisoning the atmosphere with methane, adding to greenhouse gas emissions. And it is a fact that the unbearably numerous population of the Earth's states are killing the ecology with cow farts and 1,000 more deadly phenomena. In New Delhi, a few million people cook on small wood fires, and the smoke has polluted the air so that even to breathe the air coats the lungs with poison. Just to breathe. People wear masks there. The size of these human populations is straining the resources of the planet, and the wars of the future will be fought over water. Am I still coming through loud and clear?
Absolutely you are, yeah, Frank, no problem.
The chiefest threat to world peace and to the very continuance of life, the life of, for example, plants and fish, is the frightening number of births, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where a great proportion of the women have 5 and 6 children. If the Green Party is concerned with the environment and climate change, it should recognize that the prime threat is the burgeoning population of the human species. Now, one would expect the Green Party and Greta Thunberg to go to Africa and combat this birth explosion. But these are Marxists, commies, dupes of conspirators and commissars of the like of Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, of Franz Boas and Ruth Frankenberg. They are watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside. As such, they are trained to despise and hate the white and to worship every alien. While calling whites xenophobes, they are xeno bumsuckers, for they have a craving to lick colored bum. You see, if there is an explosion in the population of Africa, that means there are more colored backsides to lick. A veritable feast of colored bums. Therefore, this population explosion and menace to the ecology delights them. That explains why the Green Parties delight at the birth explosion and welcome the mass immigration of all these alien peoples into white countries. Agreed?
Agreed, absolutely.
So I would address these green commies and Marxists in the following terms. I would say, Comrade Fartface and Commissar Bum Features. The biggest threat to world peace and life on the planet is the fantastic multiplication of the population of Africa. Every one of these people ventilates their backside. Every backside is a source of emissions, greenhouse gases. Does African bum have a coating of genetically modified Monsanto honey, declared by Greta Thunberg to be carbon neutral? Does Asian bum contain a layer of molasses, sticky sweet, organically grown, and certified by Greta Thunberg to be climate friendly? Is this honey and molasses like the ambrosia of the gods, the ambrosia that is rich with the gift of eternal life? Is that why you're so anxious to lick and nibble on alien bum? Is that why you want to fill all the white countries with colored backsides? But it is in vain to speak to these morons. They fulminate, but it is all emissions of stinky methane from their empty mouths. It is said that it takes at least a bird brain to run a loudmouth, but I doubt that these idiots have even that much brain. So, there is my answer to all those people who said that I was indulging in levity and humor. I'm talking about the most serious of things. I'm dealing with critically important issues. Do you agree?
I totally agree, and humor is a great way to put that across, you know, because I think we are a little bit too serious about these things sometimes, and so when we use a bit of levity and jocularity, I think it's really good. I think it's, and I think you put it very well there, Frank. Yeah, carry on.
So we come to the main issue. That is the issue that you mentioned, that E. Michael Jones said that it's better not to say white people or the white race, or for the interest of white people. He said people might instantly turn off and call you a supremacist. You said something. You were going to say something about that.
Yeah, what he was saying is he's written a book called The Slaughter of Cities, where he described particularly where he grew up in Philadelphia, where the black people from the South were brought up into the northern cities, where you had a kind of a strong Irish community, a strong German community, Polish, whatever, and they were all, those ethnic neighborhoods were basically done away with, and they were moved out into suburbia, and they became white, where they lost their identity as to where they were actually from, And he says that he points out that if you use that word white, it kind of gives ammunition to the other side to call you white supremacists and whatever. But he's also come out with some other strange things, where I think someone sent him a message on Twitter asking him if a Nigerian went to Poland and lived there for 20 years and learned the language and became a Catholic, does that make him Polish? And E. Michael Jones said yes. So that's kind of strange,
Very bizarre, very bizarre.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will address that issue today at length because it is so important, and you will realize as I proceed that it is important. I will make it clear. Now, there was a Professor Noel Ignatieff, Harvard professor, who was an enemy of the white race. And among other things, he said, we will keep bashing the dead white males and the live ones, and the females too, until the social construct known as the white race is destroyed, not deconstructed, but destroyed. Now, notice that word bashing? He meant verbal and emotional bashing because verbal and emotional bashing works. Whites will surrender and bow their heads to their dispossession, subjection, and genocide if we bash them in the mind. That's basically what he said. Now, what are their chief techniques for doing that? First, make the whites feel worthless and inferior, which they do with their movies and their advertisements, in which the white guy is the loser, the black guy solves the problem, he gets the girl. Big topic, I won't go into that, but that's the first technique. Make the whites feel worthless and inferior. But then there's the second technique. Make the whites feel that to be white is identical. And there I'm using the word identical, not leading to or consequential, identical to being evil and supremacist. Now, this is done by techniques such as the word trick of whiteness. In the universities, they always preach about whiteness. And what is whiteness? This was defined by a certain Ruth Frankenberg, who said that whiteness is an outlook of seeking privilege, of seeking to be superior, of seeking to have advantage over other races. Now, look at the trick. If that's what universities teach students, whiteness is this attitude of mind of supremacism. But then whiteness at the same time, literally as the word whiteness means, to be white. So they've conflated with one word, they've conflated the two things. They've said if to be white, to have the quality of whiteness, to be white, is to be supremacist. They could have chosen some other word, but they chose the word whiteness to denote an attitude of white supremacy. So by just saying whiteness covers both, to be white and to be supremacist, they have made it identical. It's the creation of identicality by a word trick, using the same word to mean two things. Now, there are other methods for identicality. Recently, we are speaking today in March of 2020. The most promoted content on the video streaming service Amazon Prime is the TV series Hunters. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
Well, the substance of this TV series Hunters is that there are dangerous Nazis in 1970s America, and they're going to hunt them down. They're going to hunt down all these dangerous Nazis. Now, in one scene, there's a reality show in which a Jew discusses how to spot a Nazi. A small black girl is sitting next to him. And this is episode 3, by the way, episode 3. The host says, if your neighbor greets you with a stiff-arm salute, his hand at a 45-degree angle, you can be pretty sure he's a Nazi. Again, if your neighbor has constructed next to his garage a walk-in oven, that's a sign he might be a Nazi. Other signs? He invites suggestions. The little black girl says, white. He ignores her, but a little later again she says, white. The host corrects her. Not all whites are Nazis. But she riposts. The girl replies, but all Nazis are whites. All Nazis are white. The episode, that incident ends there. It leaves behind a suggestion and an association. All whites are evil Nazis. Now, this reinforces the university message that is achieved by the word trick of whiteness, that to be white is identical to being an evil Nazi, that is to be evil. So the whiteness definition and teaching in the universities and the episode in Hunter and a million other such assault messages drive in the theme. To be white is identical to being criminal. Okay, so how else do they do this verbal and emotional bashing? Third, tell the whites they do not exist. Race is a social construct. That is, you imagine it. It's imaginary, not real. Races do not exist, hence the white race does not exist. Aha, however, the mind masters never express the conclusion that the Chinese race doesn't exist or the native Indian race doesn't exist. They just say the white race doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, there's nothing to defend. You are a member of the human race, but the most you're an American or a Canadian. But if you're an American, you can speak of the interests of all Americans, black and brown and white, but never mention the white, just say American. There's a Mark Dice video in which a black man tells Mark Dice there is no white race, and Dice has a quick reply, so white people don't exist. But it works, this insidious fraud, it works. I have heard many liberal lemmings repeat this mantra ad nauseum. In the middle of an argument, they'll say, you say stand up for the white race, but I'm not sure there is a white race to stand up for. It works. If you tell the whites their race doesn't exist. Fourth technique. Once the white man or woman accepts that his or her race does not exist, they accept that there is no self, no white self. And if there is no white self, there is no other. My people and the hordes of mestizos pouring in from Mexico are all the same. Hence it is pointless to keep any land for the non-existent white self. And it is logical that I share my land with every Mongolian that bounces around the corner, every mestizo who swims across the Rio Grande as a beggar, who will eventually be king over me. So, Brizer, when whites show some anger and resistance to the inflow of aliens, say across the German border or the Mexican border, the media pontificators tell them to stop thinking of the mestizos as the other, of the Arabs as the other, to stop otherizing them out of hate and fear. This is the endlessly repeated meme of the universities and the media. There is no other. Do not otherize the alien invader. So in effect, they're told that there is no white self, and it follows that everything they enjoy or need must be handed over to the almighty other. Therefore, any thought of preserving a street or a county or a TV channel for whites is ridiculous, not to be entertained. So does that make sense to you, Brizer?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying there. Yeah, that it is happening, without a doubt.
Yeah. So obliterate the self, basically. If there is no other, well, it means there is no self, right?
Yeah.
Fifth technique, and it's the last one I'll talk about, it's because it's the major one. It's the false association of concepts. It works by the most common trick of the sneak rulers, the trick of the false association of concepts. The sneaks create a false association between disparate concepts, binding them together in the emotional undermind. They can create an association in the mind between the Pope and the devil, so you'll see the Pope as Satan and conflate the two. Now the sneaks have created a false association between several disparate things. What are these disparate things, these separate things? Being conscious that you are white, wanting to live in a white society, wanting to marry a white only, wanting to see more generations of white children, discriminating unfairly against colored individuals, denying them jobs, hating other races, wanting to enslave and whip other races, wanting to kill people of other races, shoving Jews into gas chambers, wanting to conquer and rule colored states and nations. These are all very different phenomena, but they are said to be seamlessly linked, all part of a unified whole. And they're all of them covered under the umbrella term, the unifying term, racist. So, through movies, adverts, and other means, the sneaks have fabricated a construct such that if the average white says, I'm a white person, I'm different from a Negro, or I want to live in a white neighborhood, it follows by association, by false association, that he wants to burn Jews in ovens and nuke the African continent. Now, of course, it's a false association. The Japanese and Koreans see themselves as distinct races, distinct from Africans and whites. But that doesn't mean that they want to exterminate other races and burn minority peoples in ovens. It's a false association between several very different things, and it associates the innocent and the good with the evil and the bad. Now, at this point, Brizer, any questions?
It reminds me a little bit of, you might have heard of that former KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov, where he says, there's 4 stages to conquering a nation. And the first one is demoralization, and then destabilization, and then a kind of a state of chaos or crisis, and then normalization. Mm-hmm. We're kind of, it's quite similar, isn't it? Because first of all, you have to demoralize the white people, that they're useless, they're of no worth, they're bad people, you know, they hate all other races, and they're women beaters and they hate gay people and all this type of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they feel really bad, and then it kind of, because they feel bad about themselves, then this destabilization comes in where the society starts falling apart. And
but have I made myself clear about the point of false association?
Yeah.
The link one with the other, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, of course, you're going to be wondering, how does the enemy construct this false association? Well, show it by example. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Well, first there's the movie, for example, American History X. In this movie, which is a famous movie, American History X, some white persons are alarmed at the mestizo invasion. Well, they immediately turn to violence. They go to a factory where there are some mestizos working. They beat them up to induce them to leave the US. But it gets worse. The protagonist, this white nationalist, this racist, he holds a black at gunpoint, orders him to crouch and bite the curb, that is to put his mouth on the right angle edge of the concrete curb. He then stomps on the black man's head, splitting open his jaw and cracking his skull with a fiendish grin. The association that is made: if you want to live in a white country or society of your folk, you're a wicked sadist. So the association's made in that very scene, when he stamps on that black man's head and splits open his skull. Now, it would be very interesting for everybody to see the 1988 movie Betrayed. Betrayed stars Tom Berenger and Deborah Winger. Now, this film is supposedly portraying reality, for it is based upon a white nationalist group called The Order, led by the genuine hero, Robert J. Matthews, which happened, and they say the film is based upon this reality. Now, the movie depicts the white nationalists as wearing militia uniforms, and that does not conform to the truth, for the Order group did not wear uniforms. So I have to infer that the intent of the movie producers was to vilify the militia movement, a vanguard of white resistance. Now, the movie tells one truth, that the Order wanted a country for white people, and they were sick of the country being run by the Jews. They said so in the movie. But then follows the lie. The Order members abduct a Negro man, and they hunt him through the woods with rifles. They give him 5 minutes, and then they start hunting him. They run after him. You see the terrified, distended eyes of the black man as he runs for his life, his face distorted with fear. You see the cruel, remorseless faces of the killers. You feel deeply for the black victim. You're disgusted by the white patriots. They're not patriots anymore. They're now racists. The association, the false association made: a white who wants to live among his people is a psychopathic killer. So.
Yeah, I remember seeing that film, actually, Frank, years and years ago. Yeah,
wonderful.
Kind of bring it back. I remember it well. Yeah, yeah. It was it's quite vague to me now, but yeah, I do remember that, where it was they really tried to portray that militia group as awful people. The worst of the worst.
Psychopathic, sadistic, murderous. Now there are outlined 5 of the methods by which the enemy has brought under control the minds of whites. But of course, these methods are interlinked. For instance, if you feel that you are white, and hence a worthless loser and a wicked racist, you will desire the obliteration of the white self and surrender to the other. One of them links with the other. If you think you're worthless, you'll want the obliteration of the white self, and you'll want to surrender and give everything to the other. So, due to these intellectual swindles, these moral and emotional assaults, whites feel ashamed to be white, to want a white society, more white births, another generation of white children. Under this bashing, they are morally intimidated and will not work for their race's interests and survival. They do not dare to speak for their race's interests. Thus, very few white men and women speak for the interests of the most meaningful group that they belong to, their ethnic group, their race. This is the branch that they sit on, and yet they are happy to see others saw away the branch. Now we come to the first major theme of this talk, and there are 2 themes, and the first major theme is: even those few individuals who do dare to speak are cowed and muzzled and therefore ineffective. When some forlorn figure does speak for the white race's interests, he does so in a cowardly manner. He does not speak frankly and explicitly for his people, white people. These white spokespersons are too intimidated, too cowed to speak straight. Now, to introduce the issue, I'll mention that in 1986 I was visiting Canada, and there was some controversy over immigration, and some bold advocate for whites said that white people were badly affected by the colored immigration and the higher crime that it brings. An elected figure, a minister or prime minister, instantly said, and this was reported in the papers the next day, that the speaker was a bigot. He himself was not a bigot, so he understood that crime was an issue for all Canadians. And in the interest of all Canadians, he demanded that the immigration department look into the criminal histories of prospective immigrants. So the conclusion, you cannot speak for whites, you have to include the interests of every turbaned Sikh colonizer and hijab-wearing Arab invader. If you do speak for whites, you have to hide behind the interests of alien invaders. It has to be all Canadians, all Americans. And the white spokesmen of today, too, have been bullied into this cowardice. Now, you might say, what the hell does that mean? And I'll say, well, look at Tucker Carlson, the most forward white spokesman in the mainstream media. He bemoans the fact that alien power is insisting that illegal aliens be given the power to vote. So he says this strips the power from Americans. Where are the rights of Americans? At times he resorts to a variation on this by saying American citizens. The illegal immigration and the sanctuary cities affect all American citizens. This is an unsound argument, since the regime has made citizens out of past illegals by amnesty and will make citizens of these new invaders. Soon any Johnny-come-lately will be a citizen as soon as he sets foot on the land. That's the Democratic Party platform. If Tucker had said whites are affected, it would have an effect. But he has been castrated, so he says citizens instead of whites, and his perorations have very little effect. Other cowards talk about the law. For years, Lou Dobbs was on CNN railing against the mestizo invasion on the grounds that we are a nation of laws. Well, now that is stupid. The law has legalized the invaders through the Refugee Convention. Tomorrow the law will eliminate the border completely. But Lou Dobbs is not stupid. He's not stupid. He may sound stupid, but he's not. He's barred from speaking for white interests. Hence he covers his white advocacy by hiding behind the law. And therefore, he had no effect at all. The invasion continues. In fact, it stepped up. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, I can see it that they do hide behind these other words. They're afraid to say the word white.
Well,
I don't know why, Frank. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'll make it clear. But it gets worse, a lot worse than this. Well, let me proceed. Laura Ingraham, Tucker's comrade on Fox News, is clearly concerned about the diminishment of whites. That the honest advocate of white interests would say, we white Americans are losing our soil to aliens. This soil and water will nourish aliens, not our children. We shall be eliminated, starved out, as roses are pushed out by weeds if the weeds are not kept out of the rose bed. An honest advocate would say, we are not living in a society of our own, comforted and enriched by the faces, smiles, and the folk soul of fellow whites. We are every day surrounded by materialistic alien faces that arouse unease and carry an alien spirit antithetical to our own, something that kills our folk soul, something that kills the innocence, the outreaching, far-yearning visionary outlook that looks out through the eyes of white men and Caucasian women. Now, that would be an honest and genuine expression of the white need and imperative, but she cannot say it. Hence, she dishonestly opposes the alien invasion by saying that the central issue is that Americans, and again she says all Americans, are endangered by the crime that the illegal aliens bring. Kate Steinle was killed by an illegal alien. The border crossings bring in the MS-13 gang. Today, I was listening to Donald Trump making a speech in South Carolina, just yesterday, I believe. And that's all he talked about, MS-13, crime, this, that. He didn't say these distinct issues. So, the supreme example of this is that Donald Trump appealed to white patriotism and white interests when he came down the elevator and started his campaign. And that day he bemoaned the alien colonization of America by saying of Mexicans that, quote, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, unquote. Like all cowardly arguments, it fails to state the core issue that this soil is for our blood, and instead resorts to a half-truth, one that's easily refuted. As the pushers of the invasion rightly point out, most of these colored invaders are simply people who want a better life. They're not drug dealers or rapists. The real crime is they're seeking a better life on the land of white Americans. That's their crime. But the fact is, if you keep calling them all criminals, you'll be pointed out rightly as a liar. So that makes sense to you?
Yes, indeed, it does.
Now, the inability to speak frankly as a white patriot and as a white person is again seen when white advocates cannot call the invaders what they are: alien colonists, foreigners, and therefore enemies. They become enemies when they step onto your soil, not before. But you can't speak frankly about it. Even the most pushy of the invaders is called a victim, and we are not against their invasion. Now, I'll give you a really good example of this. In the summer of 1999, 4 ships carrying about 600 Chinese persons landed on the coast of BC, British Columbia. And these people all made refugee claims, and for once the Canadian white woke up. But even the white patriots did not dare to call them invaders and unwelcome. Guess what these patriots said? They said their concern was that these Chinese invaders were suffering victims. The real villains were the, quote, snakeheads, unquote. Snakeheads, the people smugglers. They're the real villains. We should guard the coast to prevent the snakeheads from victimizing more innocent refugee claimants. Not to prevent an invasion of our country, not to prevent our dispossession, it's to prevent them from victimizing more of those Chinese refugee claimants. And we have sympathy for them. Well, what happened is the Canadian whites paid a few $1 million for the refugee processing, and they even catered in food from Chinese restaurants in Victoria. So they'll feel comfortable eating Chinese food. They catered in food from Chinese restaurants in Victoria to make these barges in feel welcome. Well, their refugee claims failed, and they were sent back on buses to the airport. On their way to the airport, these Chinese raised 2 fingers to give the Canadians the fuck you. That's what you get for feeding them and putting up with them. In all the papers of that day and all the TV shows, no one dared to condemn these Chinese invaders. No one dared to condemn them as invaders, as people barging in, as colonizers, though they were the real enemy. They were the real danger to white Canadians. Instead, they pretended sympathy for them. That's how bad it's got. Similarly, today the cowardly American patriots call for a wall at the southern border to protect the sneaky invaders from the coyotes and rapists among them. Our concern is to protect the invaders from dying of thirst in the desert. We need a wall to protect the people who are flooding in from the coyotes, from the criminals who might rape them. Oh, our concern is not for our dispossession. Our concern is not for white Americans. Our concern is for the Latino invaders. That's why we need a wall. So the alien is worshipped and revered even when he's an invader and the white is trying to stop his invasion. Well, go figure. What do you say?
Yeah, that's very true. I've seen that type of stuff happen here too. For example, what they're doing is when they bring these people in, they put them into what they call direct provision centers, which are like disused hotels or hostels or whatever in various small towns around the country. And there's been quite a few protests against it, basically saying we don't want these people here. That's it. We don't want them here.
Well, that's the honest approach. That's the honest
approach, yeah. But what happens is then the government send in their change agents to go in and say, well, maybe it's inhumane to put them into these direct provision centers and that they should be allowed to integrate into the society and give them proper homes and stuff like that, right? But that's not what the people feel at all. They say, no, this is totally going to have huge effects on our little community here, where everybody knows each other, And these people are complete strangers. They are bringing in a different religion, different traditions. We don't know anything about them. And we were never asked whether these people could come in. So anytime anyone tries to raise that, immediately racists, straight out.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're getting. And that it does tend to silence some people, but more people are kind of beginning to see through it now, that they're just using this as a kind of a weapon just to beat them down with, you know.
Well, I bet you that the newspapers and the media will talk about these invaders as being, we're trying to protect the invaders. They won't dare really condemn the invader as the invader.
No, they just again say about these poor people. They came from war-torn countries and whatever, and they need to be looked after. And we of course, we have our obligations to the UN as well. You see, this type of thing. But I mean, where did the Irish people or the German people or the French people, where did they give their consent to any of this? You see, this is the thing. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you raise that, mm-hmm. No, the guilt trip is put on you. And I mean, there was even a woman, a black woman I think she was in the UN. I think she was from Jamaica, and she had a go at the Irish people, saying that they had to play their part now because they were involved in colonialism, British colonialism.
Oh well, any trick will do, right?
Yeah. Again, so they're trying everything to kind of make people feel bad, and of course people over here just laughed at that and says, "Hold on a second, we were sent over there as slaves before even the black people were." So,
anyway, you got the point.
We ain't looking for reparations, you know what I mean?
You got the point I'm making, that even when there's an advocate for whites, someone like Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham or whoever, even when they say they want a border wall or they want to stop the invasion, they have to hide behind they can't say that these are the invaders. Yeah. They say our concern is for that they might die on the way. We must stop the profits of the people smugglers,
it's inhumane conditions that they have to be put under and all this, and instead of really going to the nub of the issue as to why they shouldn't be coming here in the first place. And
because they're too intimidated to speak for whites, because whites are intimidated people, so they hide behind all these little excuses. But this is all very serious stuff. I think you need a little humor. Mm-hmm. Would you like some humor?
Yes, please. It's a Frank Raymond special, is it?
Well, it's all very deadly stuff. We need to lighten up a bit.
We do.
Well, there was once a farmer who had 5 daughters. And they were good-looking girls, so guys kept coming around, and finally the farmer took to answering the door with a shotgun. Well, one Saturday evening he was lying down on the sofa trying to get a rest, and the doorbell rings. And there's this good-looking guy all dressed to the nines, and he says, "I'm here for your eldest daughter. My name is Steve. If I marry her, you'll not grieve. Is she ready to leave?" The farmer said, rhyming, huh? Rhyming's pretty cute. Okay, so he lets his daughter go. Mm-hmm. And he tries to get a rest, but then the doorbell rings again, and there's a second guy, another guy, and this guy is also well-dressed, and he says, "I'm here for your second daughter. My name is Bob. I do have a job, and I'm no slop." And the farmer says, rhyming, that's pretty good. That's pretty good rhyming. He lets his daughter go. He wants a rest, but oh no, the doorbell rings again. On this time, there's a third guy. And he says, "I'm here for your third daughter. My name is Joe. I'm here for Flo. We're going to the show. Is she ready to go?" And the farmer says, rhyming again. Oh, well, that's pretty good. He lets his daughter go. This time, I'm really going to get a rest. This time, I'm gonna have a sleep. But oh no, the doorbell rings again. He opens the door. There's 2 guys. They've come from different directions, these 2 guys. One of them looks at the other and says, "Well, I'll go first." He says, "I'm here for your 4th daughter. My name is Rex." He didn't get any further. Out comes the shotgun. Bang! Kapow! Dead. Well, the other guy is terrified. He starts shaking and says, "Oh my God, what did you do that for? He killed him." "Oh, I'll try anyway. I'm here for your 5th daughter. My name is Chuck." No further. The other barrel. Bang. Now, don't know if you found that funny.
Yes, it was good.
But I'll tell you something, that's a bit of humor, a bit of wit that only the white race can produce. You won't get that quality and that kind of wit in any other, that kind of joke in any other race. I was on the ferry the other day. There was a little girl. She was, I think, 5 years old. And she asked me a puzzle, and I couldn't answer it. And the puzzle was, why is it that you should never trust atoms? Why is it that you can never believe atoms? Atoms as in atomic energy.
Yeah.
Why is it that you can never believe atoms? Do you know, Brizer?
No, I don't. Don't know the answer to that one.
Well, she told me the answer, because they make up everything.
Yeah, that's true.
They make up everything. You can't trust them.
Yeah, I get it.
So again,
yeah,
a girl of 5 of any other race would be unlikely to appreciate that joke. You know, I've met people from all over the world.
Do you not see that type of humor in other races of people at all as well? You don't see that kind of clever, sarcastic stuff. Yeah,
I do see humor, but not. They don't catch it that quickly. They don't make the connections that quickly. Mm-hmm. They don't also appreciate the humor so much. But there is humor, definitely there is. Mm-hmm. But the kind of quick intelligence, the making of connections, the speculative leaps, the whites are better at it. Mm-hmm. So if you lived in a non-white society, or if your society became non-white, you'd miss out on these things. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you one thing, that there's this fellow Trudeau in Canada, and it all started with his father, Pierre Trudeau, who was an instrument of evil, of the sneak rulers, and he started the multiculturalism without any reference to the wishes of Canadians, any reference. I often feel that Canadians should make a trip, a pilgrimage, an annual pilgrimage to the grave of this Pierre Trudeau. Do you know why?
Why?
To piss on it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a lot of Canadians that will agree with you on that one, Frank.
But as for this Trudeau, this one, the son, today's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he has that silly face. And every time, I think every Canadian should just kick his backside. And the idea is that every time someone kicks his backside, everyone else should say, once more with feeling.
Do you think he could be Fidel Castro's son? Because I've seen pictures of the young Fidel and...
I think it's highly
Justin.
likely.
And the wife used to make regular trips to Cuba as well, didn't she? So...
Well, the wife was a notorious fornicator, so yeah. It's very likely. And Trudeau has a smarmy, oily face, so why not?
Yeah.
Nothing's impossible there.
No.
Well, now we come to the second theme of this discussion, maybe the more important theme. Up to now, I've discussed the fact that whites are so beaten down that they don't dare speak explicitly for their people's interests. They resort to lies and covers and excuses, and they're mighty indirect about it. Even the advocates are too beaten down to speak explicitly for the interests of white people. But it goes further. Whites cannot even speak their own name. I have never heard an establishment politician or a media personality say, white people have become a minority, or white people built the American civilization, or the white people, the indigenous people of Britain. I've never heard a public figure say it. Even Donald Trump, the man who came to office by appealing to the needs and yearnings of white people, has never ventured to use the term white people. Oh, he refers to the Latino community and what he's done for them. He says black people are experiencing, thanks to me, record levels of employment. But he never says white people in any context. His dog whistles make it clear that he's speaking to them or of them, but even he is too intimidated to say the word white. For instance, and here I am paraphrasing here, he'll say things like, you, the people of Idaho, or you, the people of Nebraska, you and your fathers and mothers created a civilization out of the wilderness. You built the farms and the cities and the marvelous prosperity that many come to enjoy. You do the hard work, you produce the food that is on our tables. You are honest people who believe in work, not empty talking and paper pushing. But he never says, you white people are the salt of the earth, or the white people of this country are sick and tired of the invasion, of being bashed at every turn by the media and the Hollywood movie makers. It is as if white people are the invisible people, the illegitimate people, the unwanted people whose name no one wants to bring up. People that is so ashamed that they dare not speak their own name. However, many TV personalities, especially colored ones, will say white when bashing them or suggesting wicked racism, as in, quote, white voters are motivated by hate and fear of the other and are therefore not voting for the progressive colored woman Kamala Harris. The very word white is never mentioned in any positive context, and no politician advocating for white interests ever dares to say white people. Now, there's a white nationalist named Vincent James who operates the YouTube channel The Red Elephants. But even he, a white nationalist, weasels around with narratives such as, due to this demographic change, Texas has switched to the Democratic Party and political power will never go to the Republicans ever again. He can't say white. If you can't say white, say Republican. So, Brizer, to address one of your concerns, it's as if whites are the fart in the room that no one will speak of. Everyone knows the fart is there, and some turn up their noses at it, but no one will speak of it. Mm-hmm. Now, I've addressed this at length in my interview with Giorgio on Republic Broadcasting Network, RBN, so I shall not belabor this point. Mm-hmm. I will ask the question, why? What has brought about the development that people cannot say white people, my people, or you white folks? I'll address that question, but I'm telling you, I cannot give you a full explanation. But I will suggest a few starting points, a few factors. First factor, since it is not possible to speak for whites, it is therefore not possible to say their name. Tucker Carlson, in his show, described the situation in the town of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, where colored aliens, mainly mestizo, have replaced the whites to the tune of from 2% in 2000 to over 50% in 2016. That is an explosive growth and a practical colonization in 16 years. Tucker said, and I'm quoting, now this is a quote from Tucker Carlson, people who grew up in Hazleton returned to find that they could not communicate with the people who now live there. Why? Because the new people don't speak English. But note what Tucker said, people who grew up in Hazleton. In a subsequent broadcast, Tucker said, lifelong Hazleton residents. He just cannot say the white residents, the white residents or the white people. And why? Well, that's simple. Tucker cannot say white since he's not allowed to speak for white people. How do you speak in defense of white people without pronouncing the word white? Mm-hmm. But if you say white, if you pronounce the word white, it becomes apparent that you're doing that which you are forbidden to do. That is, defend whites. Mm-hmm. That makes sense?
Yeah. It's see it everywhere.
Now, look at the second. Go on.
No, I'd say, people who are even who are awake to the problem are still afraid to say that word. It's a bad word in the dictionary now. It's just you can't say it. And I'm just trying to figure out why. Well, what's stopping people from saying it?
Well, I gave you 5 factors which explain how whites are intimidated. Mm-hmm. But then I'm going to give you these factors why you can't say the word white. Second factor would be word association. The mind masters have associated the concept of white with the concepts of a worthless race, with supremacism, wicked racism, and so forth. In the process, they've gone beyond concept association to word association. The very word white is associated with the concepts of nastiness, whipping slaves, and menfolk who are losers. Now, this word association is also reinforced by a parallel practice. In the mainstream media, movies, and books, the characters and talking heads always say the word white in a negative context. It is whites who set police dogs upon the Negro protesters in Selma, Mississippi. There are these talented, unfortunate mestizos who are coming to contribute to America, whose only crime is that they're seeking a better life, but the whites of Arizona are voting Republican out of hate and fear and a primitive caveman instinct to otherize nice strangers. These same public figures will never say the whites who gave electricity, flush toilets, and modern medicine to the colored peoples. They'll never say the whites who uniquely abolished the universal and age-old practice of slavery. The whites who with innocence and non-sectarian generosity voted for the black man Obama. They're not going to say the whites who are feeding the mestizos, the whites who in Canada are giving the native Indians vast amounts of the goods that they produce as federal tax money and stipends and grants and so forth. They'll never say the whites who died to save the South Koreans from cruel communism via the Korean War. So because the public figures always use the word white in a negative sense and never use it in a good sense, the word white is associated with bad and never with good. Mm-hmm. So this is word association, and due to this unbreakable glue-like word association, whites and their defenders are reflexively afraid of saying white people. So it's like aversion therapy. If you say this word, you'll get an electric shock. Mm-hmm. So they've ceased to say the word.
Yeah. It's like an electric fence type of thing. I know what you're saying. If you touch it, bang, you get that shock, yeah. Well, we just have to break out of this, Frank, don't we? Simple as that.
Well, there's a third factor, though. There's a third factor.
Yeah. Okay.
And since the white race doesn't exist, it's foolish to use a word for it. Now, this applies most of all to university students and university graduates, to social justice warrior types, and to intellectual buffoons. The sneaks tell them endlessly that whites do not exist, there is no white race. So subconsciously, they feel it's insane to use the word white in connection with race, nations, and politics. So I've tried to give some analysis as to why there's a taboo against using the word white. I know it's inadequate. Maybe you have something to add.
I suppose a lot of it's probably gone down through education and brainwashing and what they've seen on TV. A lot of that would, it's been pushed into people's heads quite slowly down through the years. And now that it's here, somehow it's inside them that they can't see. It's like a curse or something that's been put on people where just to mention that word is, so it's it's like the word racism, isn't it? But more people are seeing through that word now. But all you have to do is just stand up and just say it. Mm-hmm. Say you're white, I mean, you're seeing a lot of memes, it's okay to be white. You've seen a lot of these signs that have been put up around different places. And, the left-wing media and the social justice warriors go crazy when they see it. It's a sign that says it's okay to be white. Now, what's wrong with that?
Well, as your friend Andy said, if they object to it, they must be saying it's not okay to be white. That's what Andrew Carrington Hitchcock said.
Yeah, that's the message that's coming out. Yeah, it's not okay to be white. Now, if you put up a sign saying it's okay to be black, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I don't hear any like White Lives Matter. Don't hear about that. So, but maybe we'll break through, Frank. I think it will, because more and more people are beginning to cop on a bit now,
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, back that whole issue of whiteness or ethnicity, okay? Let's bring it, say, back to Ireland again, where we, up to 20 years ago, we didn't have any immigrants coming in here, okay? A few Chinese here and there, but that's about it. So being white here, we wouldn't have even thought about being white because we were naturally, everyone had white skin. Just like everyone has got a head and 2 arms and 2 legs. So whiteness was never a thing, but we were kind of proud to be Irish because this is where we're from, right? And so what do you say then? Are we Irish or are we white? Or are we both? Or what is it? Because
of course you're both. Of course you're both. Nick Griffin was once chief of the BNP, and he was objecting to work visas and working holiday visas. And a BBC commentator said to him rightly that you would deny working holiday visas to black people or to Chinese, but you'd be okay with giving them to Hungarians or to Russians or to, Swedes.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so he told the truth in my view, because those people, the Swedes and the Hungarians, are white, and you're all members of the same race family. Mm-hmm. And there is a significant difference, though, between a white Englishman and an African. Mm-hmm. So you are Irish, and you're a member of the white race family. What's wrong with that? Nothing difficult about that concept.
No, it's not. And I think it's coming more to the fore now because we're seeing such an Irish influx of people coming in with a different colour skin. And the first thing we notice is that difference. They got black skin, we got white skin. And we also know, well, they're coming from far away, so they definitely have different ways of thinking than we do. So straight away, you're seeing the difference there. And not only that, but the same is happening all across Europe. So whether you're in Sweden or in Germany or in France or whatever, they're seeing this exact same thing. So that's that's that connection between us all that we see that. Now there is differences between an Irishman and a Frenchman and a Hungarian and a Lithuanian. Right? There are differences. Language is the main one, obviously, and there's different cultural differences and whatever. But there's something else. I think there's some kind of a code of morality or decency or something about us that kind of binds us together.
Well, that something is called the folk soul, the race soul, and a certain dream, sort of dreamy outlook, a visionary, outreaching thing. But that is very gone into. I went into that in great detail in my book, Sweet Dreams and Terror Cells. These, when you say they're of a different color, that color is only one marker of a lot of a spectrum of differences. Color is only a marker. The white skin is a marker, one characteristic of the white race. There are other characteristics that are unique. And they're very valuable characteristics. The love for children, the love for animals, the innocence that leads white to be, for example, to go to Africa and build tube wells and run AIDS clinics there, whereas no rich Chinese or Japanese would do it. But that's just a marker. That's only a marker. There are deep, fundamental things. And for that, people would have to read my book, Sweet Dreams and Terror Cells, and that outlines the whole spectrum.
I'll tell you what we'll do, Frank, because we're just over the top of the hour. I can't believe we've gone through an hour already. So we'll just take a short 4-minute break, Frank, okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we'll see you back after this.